it's me, Levi, and it's almost Christmas time, and Christmas means presents, and I've been getting some pretty cool presents from some pretty cool people, starting with this gorgeous cloth that I got from Martin at Tarot in the City. Oh man, I just love it. I love this little fox figure. I have something with foxes. But what I was here to actually show you guys is this little present that I got from Chris. Chris from Cards and Colors. Chris is from Germany, lives pretty close by. He got this deck in, he did like it, but he didn't like it enough to keep it, and he knew that I have been trying to get my hands on a copy for a while. And this is really interesting. This is a deck by Dark Sinevere. I know that Dark Sinevere don't have the best reputation online, especially amongst our American friends. And what gets lost in translation very often, literally, is that Dark Sinevere is a Ukrainian company. And, you know, in Europe, and especially in Eastern Europe, the whole mentality of order now, get tomorrow doesn't really work that way, which I already knew and which I am used to. We don't really get that instant gratification over here. So, you know, they started up a lot of tarot projects, and then shit kind of hit the fan when they realized they had taken on more than they could handle. So the production got backed up and they didn't really communicate properly, which is very bad on their part, but eventually they are starting to ship out all of their decks now, so that's great. And I love this deck. It's really weird. It's really really cool. It's not perfect, and I will show that to you in a second, but I still love it for its art and the whole vibe and aesthetic of it. So this is a box. It's a pretty standard Chuck box. The one astray, she was at the forest, alone in the spruce, could not soar. Earth swallowed, her water washed her away. And the fire rose, and she learned how to fly. The nature, you, the nature is me. Really interesting. Let's not waste any time. Let's just get into the cards, because they are really special. We do get two extra bonus cards for the Major Arcana. We get the Familiar card, and we get the Forest card, and I haven't really used these in any readings yet. I have kind of been going back and forth on using these extra cards in decks. I don't tend to use them unless I feel like they actually add something to the reading experience, and in this case, I don't really think they do. They're just pretty art cards. The backs are really gorgeous as well. It's printed on a really good, flexible, yet sturdy linen cardstock, and it glides. They glide. Oh man, so cool. So, two bonus cards. Let's get into the majors. So we're going to start with the Fool. The Fool is very interesting because it's not just one figure, but it's basically the four main characters you'll see in this deck, kind of flying a broomstick, sort of flying over the forest, kind of almost as if they are now entering this fairy tale scene, which I haven't really seen before. It's like, hey, we are arriving to the forest, which I think is pretty cool. We're here now. The adventure can begin. And then we start with another one of the main characters for the Magician. Now, you won't see all the standard symbolism in here. However, we do get fire, we get water, we get earth, and I guess air is the air present. So I love this folksy, very Eastern European 70s, 60s, 70s kind of illustrations. I really love it. There's an artist called All You Need Is Wall on Instagram who has been working on a tarot deck for a long time. She's taking her time, and that's good. It's her deck. She can do whatever she wants. And this art style is kind of reminiscent of her. So then we head into another main character that plays a part in this fairy tale, the High Priestess. the Empress, and finally the Emperor. And what I love about this tarot deck is that it's more of a storybook rather than a standard tarot deck. So now we have seen all the main players, all the main characters, and they kind of tell this story. Then we head into the Hierophant, and there we add a fifth energy, this all-seeing eye. Almost like, if we look at this from a storybook perspective, it's almost like it's the storyteller. When you know within fairy tales, there's always that almighty storyteller that leads the story along, and I kind of see the Hierophant as that. Then we head into the Lovers, which is all the main characters dancing. So this is kind of that. It's really interesting in the storybook of this tarot. It's really interesting because we see them kind of getting ready to do something, to make a choice, to make a decision, and then in the next card they're kind of dilly-dallying, they haven't yet decided what they are gonna do in this forest. We've established that they're here, we've established the characters in the story, and now they're just kind of, celebrating, dancing. We don't really know what we're gonna do yet. And then in the Chariot, they find their purpose, and they have their agency, and they do what needs to be done in order to get what they want. Then we get Strength, which is a little bit random, I think. It is interesting because I don't know how well it's going to show up on camera, but we get this character that we previously saw in another card, but they're standing in the rain, yet still they seem very unaffected by it, which is a gorgeous interpretation of Strength. And then we get the Hermit, and they're kind of looking at each other almost. The Hermit, who's standing in a very strong, it seems, gust of wind, and we kind of see them just being, they're wearing a mask, a face mask, to kind of hide who they are, and it's very mysterious. What kind of knowledge are they keeping inside of them? Then we get this character again for Wheel of Fortune, and this one is kind of I'm trying to make sense of things here, but I don't really get the artistic choices behind this. I get that we are kind of re-establishing the characters again, but they're all a little bit more solitary, and with Strength and with the Hermit, I could kind of make sense of it. In the Wheel of Fortune, I frankly can't. But then again, it seems like the winds are changing. So it's interesting. There's a lot of directionality here as well. So the wind is kind of being blown this way, it seems like. And then right here, the winds are changing. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but that's kind of interesting. So this deck is not very cookie cutter. It's meant for you to think about yourself. It's not very standard. And then we get the Justice card, which features the character that we saw previously in the Emperor. So let's see. We see growth. Are they holding something? Sometimes I gotta pick up the card and look at it really quickly, because I have kind of worked with this deck. I hate that term, worked with it. I haven't worked with it. I have used it, but I haven't really looked at the symbolism that much per se, because I kind of take these decks by this company at face value a lot, because sometimes there is something there, sometimes it's just pretty art, which is okay as well. So can't really see, maybe this character was the Emperor before, so maybe there is something special going on there where they've kind of evolved from Emperor to Judge. Then we head into the Hanged Man, which I find very interesting because it's kind of a Cheshire Cat kind of feeling, who definitely is It's a character from Alice in Wonderland, which we all know, and it's kind of that sense of nothing's ever really what it seems, looking at things from a different perspective. So I see that, and I love this imagery. Look, he's hiding in between these bushes right here, and I love the color palette that was chosen for this card, for all the cards really. Then we head into Death, which is a pretty standard Death image, although I do love it. You know, the skull, the flowers, the snake, rebirth, transmuting. And then we head into Temperance, or Art, and we see this really cute little fox with a very long tail, kind of sucking the nectar from a flower, which does kind of signify that Temperance art feel of alchemy, extracting something from something else to create this perfect substance, which could be seen as honey or nectar from a flower. Then we head into the Devil, where we see this crow or raven sitting atop this plant. You know, you really have to know the tarot well in order for you to read well with this deck. This kind of reminds me of a fairy tale that I read as a kid, where this crow was kind of calling onto this child with a familiar voice, and the child was like, hey, I know that voice, that's the voice of my friend, but I don't see my friend, I see a crow. And the crow kind of lures the child into the forest. That's what I kind of like recognize this from. But that's my own memories, and it's a very particular fairy tale from that I grew up with, so that may not resonate with everybody, but it's kind of that crow luring you into the forest. Then we get the Tower, where we kind of see the witch burning. And then we get the Star, where we almost see this figure trying to resurrect this flower girl, trying to refresh, reframe, trying to wake them up. It's very fairy tale-esque. It's also very dark. I like that. Dark themes. The moon, very standard but lovely. The sun, very standard but lovely. And then we get to a weird set of cards. Let me put those out on the table because I think this is very interesting. Yes, let's see. We get Judgment and the World, and it's almost like they are one. So that's pretty cool. Judgment and the World. So in the Judgment card, we get the characters that were, I don't remember. This is just kind of a fun flip through, but so we're not going to make it too deep. But we get two characters of the story here, so they're kind of wrapping up their arc here. And then we get two characters of the story here, and they're kind of wrapping up their story arc as well. And it almost seems like in these cards they are taken in by the forest. They are becoming part of the forest. So rather than this deck being called the Witch Folk Tarot, would have been really cool to call this deck something like the Forest Tarot, or Tarot of the Forest, or Forest Fairy Tale Tarot, something like that. Because we do get a really clear story arc in the major arcana. Now, is it completely cohesive with the system of the tarot? Not necessarily, but it's a lovely story to look at. So those were the majors. For the minors, I'm going to zoom us out because I want all the minors to be on the table at once. So hold up. All right. So whereas we very much were in the forest with these four witches and some, secondary helper characters or familiars, it almost seems like in the minors, we are kind of looking at all these four witches and then their tools. And I haven't really figured out which belongs to which, but we get the Ace of Wands, the Ace of Sword, and that's where I'm kind of like, whoops, Ukrainian language barrier. I have commented on their Instagram very often trying to I help them whenever I see they make some, you know, language mistakes, but I can kind of look past that, especially since the fact that I've been gifted this deck. The Ace of Pentacles and the Ace of Cups. But yeah, the Ace of Sword does kind of stand out like a sore thumb, and at least it's consistent all the way throughout the suit of swords. So where we were first in the forest with these witches, it's kind of it kind of looks like we are looking at each and every individual witch's toolkit here. So it's interesting. And we see a lot of patterns in the minor. So the aces are all kind of like this planetary thing. They all have this planetary thing going on. Not sure if the elemental associations that we usually have are necessarily there, but it's interesting. So we have all the aces first. Oh, well, maybe we can kind of see which witch belongs to which witch. So we get that High Priestess person kind of in the wands. Then we get that Wheel of Fortune person kind of in the swords. Then we get that Emperor person, Flower Girl, in the pentacles. And we get the masked Hermit Girl in the cups. So that's interesting. So we do clearly see the people there. I don't know about the standard symbolism, so I'm kind of going to ignore that. I'm just going to take you through the story. So for the threes, we get plants, and we get plants and animals. So there is cohesion in it. It's just interesting. I don't really... Oh, there is an animal here, and there's a very dark animal here as well. It looks like we have that cat here, we have the crow here, we have the fox here, we have the snake here. So it's interesting. There is more to this deck. I just need time to recognize the patterns, and that's why I'm kind of making this video as well. So in time, when I watch it back, I will maybe notice different things. So we do get that familiar or animal kind of coming back. So I do love that. Once again, kind of ignoring the standard tarot symbolism here because it's not really there. Then we get another character, and it's kind of interesting because we are kind of moving on from that 2 to that 4. So that's pretty cool. So there is kind of where the major arcana story was more about the group coming into the forest. It's almost like this is telling their individual story, so that's interesting. Oh, that's really cool. Oh man, I am kind of seeing more patterns than I did before because with this one, in the 2, let me show you really quickly. In the 2, they're kind of flying away. I'm gonna put all of these below so I can kind of show you guys. Yeah, that's pretty dope. This one goes here. This one goes here. Okay, so in the 2, they were kind of flying away, and then in the 4, we get that structure of them kind of resting on this cloud. In the 1, or in the 2, we kind of got that High Priestess person picking up on something that we can't really see within the skies and then kind of grasping it here. We have this Flower Girl kind of having a sort of a meet cute with 1 flower, and then over here in the 4 with 2 flowers. And then in the cups, we kind of saw this mask girl meeting this skeleton, kind of surprised almost, and then here it's like, hey, we've come together. So there's a really, really, really interesting thing going on here. Don't know if you guys are noticing it. Don't know if it is a standard tarot deck, but it's cool. Okay, this is interesting as well. We get into the 5s, and the familiars come back. Okay, so this is really cool. There is definitely something going on here. I'm going to put those right here. 3 cups, 3 of pentacles, 3 of swords, 3 of wands. because whereas they were kind of alone in their first card, they are kind of intermingling now. So that's interesting. So in the Three of Wands, we just had the cat. In the Five of Wands, we have the cat and that crow. And that crow was the devil, kind of. So that was that difficult phase in the majors. And we kind of see that here as well. So that's really cool and interesting. Like I told you, there's more to this than meets the eye. In Three of Swords, we just had the crow. And here's the crow and the snake. The snake was in the death card. So it's once again that difficult phase. In the Three of Pentacles, we only had the fox from the Temperance card. Now we have the fox and the cat. And the cat was the Hanged Man. The fox was Temperance. This is really interesting. This is giving me a really interesting dynamic. And then in the Three of Cups, we get the snake as well as the fox. So we get death and temperance, which is a kind of which are successor cards of each other in the tarot. So I'm not going to go in too deep, but I am really seeing these patterns here. They're interesting. I wish the guidebook would tell us more on why the artist chose those patterns. So let's move on into the sixes. I'm completely fascinated by this. I hope you guys are as well. We get the Six of Cups, the Six of Pentacles, the Six of Swords, and the Six of Wands. This is interesting because the characters are moving on. Let's see, the last character cards that we had. So the Four of Wands, I'm not going to put them down. In the Four of Wands, this lady right here was grasping something from the sky, almost like she was holding hands with it. And it seems like that hand has lifted her up towards the moon, which is cool because this was that High Priestess character, and that's kind of where she belongs. In the Swords, she was resting on the clouds with this like sky dude, and now she's kind of flying away. So that's interesting. And sky dude is down below hiding in the bushes. So she's like, bye, I'm leaving. In the Pentacles, Flower Girl was resting with two flowers with eyes, and now she is no longer there. Like she's in a whole new set of flowers, so she's moving on as well. And then in the Cups, she was kind of making out with that skeleton, and now she's headed towards the sun. So the skeleton is completely out of sight. So this is really interesting. Let's see. Then we head towards the sevens. The sevens are all about agency. Seven of Wands, a hand holding an eye that's kind of teary. Seven of Swords, they're holding the sword. Seven of Pentacles, they're getting money. It looks like you could interpret this both ways. Either it's flying into her hands or it's flying out of her hands. And then in the Seven of Cups, where she was just towards that sun, she's now kind of hiding behind that tree, almost as if she's ready to do something. So that's interesting. Then we head into the H, where we see another interesting thing. We see those hands from the sky, and then we see that star right here. Then we see Wind Guy holding that star right here. Then we see the flowers with the eyes. They're back again, almost like, bitch, we're about to take revenge. And then in the Cups, we see the skeleton dude again. So basically everything that was left behind reappears again in the story. So that's really interesting. There's a lot going on here. And then in the Nines, we kind of see the almost culmination of the element, but it's a little tainted here and there. So that's really interesting too. And then my favorites, the Tens. And the Tens are kind of just this sigil. It's almost like the final page of a book, like the story ended here. So that's really, it's kind of creepy and kind of cool, don't you think? Then we head into the Quartz, which are not my favorites. We get the Knave of Wands, the Knave of Swords, the Knave of Pentacles, and the Knave of Cups. So it's kind of like the smallest, most childlike essence of that element within the Quartz. Then we get the Knight of Wands, the Knight of Sword, the Knight of Pentacles, and the Knight of Cups. Interesting. I don't really see a whole lot. We see these two being mirror images, and then these two having characters in them. Kind of looks like Sky Dude here. You know, whereas first we had that air girl kind of flying away from Sky Dude, leaving him. Seems like Sky Dude is now kind of leaving as well. So that's interesting. Don't really get what these two are doing here. And then we have Skeleton Guy here again. And it's almost like he's very stagnant because all these flowers have grown. And it's almost like he's waiting for his love to return, which is interesting. Like I said, interesting choices, interesting decks. Then we head into the Queen part again, where I'm kind of like, yeah. It's almost like this is the essence of the witch of that suit. So that's interesting. And then we head into the King, which once again has some recognizable figures, because it's almost like all the familiars are here again. We have the snake, we have the fox, we have the crows with Sky Dude. And then let me check really quickly. Maybe it's just really dark. Is the cat in here? But then we don't have the cat. That's such a missed opportunity for a cool pattern. So yeah. But maybe this is the almighty storyteller, because we see that eye. And the story is now finished. So I don't know about y'all, but I think this is a dope as fuck deck. So Chris sent this to me. He also included this little card right here, really cool. And he had it in this really cute, like organza pouch, which I also loved. And I have to say, even though it's very unusual, and even though it's not a very standard tarot deck, and maybe I'm reading into things a little too much, I do love this deck. I love it. I simply do. I'm really glad that I have it, and it's a gorgeous piece of art. Thank you, Chris, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.